Are you just an also-ran? I ain't no loser that you can dismiss. Beat this. Beat this. Beat this. Beat this, go and try. If you can't, then wave goodbye. This is my moment, my turn at bat. Beat this. Beat that. Beat this. You think you're really something, don't ya? You think you got it won, don't ya? But I got news, I ain't about to lose. Beat this, do your best. And if you can, may I suggest you throw your hat in and blow a kiss. Beat this. Beat that. Beat this. Beat this. If it you can't. Beat this. Beat this. You think you're really something, don't ya? You think you got it won, don't ya? But I got news, I ain't about to lose. Beat this, go and try. If you can't, then wave goodbye. You throw your hat in and blow a kiss. Beat this. Beat that. Beat this. If it you can't. Beat this. Beat this.
Crockett. Vice, Miami.
What's the easiest way to make money?
The first million is the hardest to make.
Right.
Yeah.
So start with the second million.
Right.
Hello?
ジョーンズ、お前得意先と会議じゃないのか？遅れるぞ。
はい。
タクシー使えよ。
はい。
あいつ今日は妙に元気だな。
あと1分で着きます。
もしかしてこれ飲んだのか？
お待たせしました。治療です。
この惑星では妙に力がみなぎる時もある。
俺も飲んじゃおうかな。
ボスからエナジーアイアンボス。
Can't stream this.
can't stream this. You can't stream this. You can't stream this. My content, it hits so hard, makes you say, oh my Lord, thank you for blessing us with a mind to rhyme and cause a fuss. Feels good when you know you're fat, a super dope homeboy, straight fly rap, and I'm known as such, and this is a copyright you just can't touch. I told you, man, good boy, can't stream this. Yeah, that's how I'm litigating, and you know, can't stream this. Look at my pants, man, you can't stream this. Yo, talk shit in the chat and get bad. You can't stream this. Fresh new artists and fans. You got it like that, pretend you're here to dance. So move within your seat. And what do I girl? You choke on his beat while it's rolling. Hold on, litigate a little bit. Let them know what's going on. Like that. Like that. Cold on a mission, so fall on back. Let them know that you're too much. And this is content they can't touch. Yo, I told you can't stream this. You can't stream this. Stop. Ginger time, go with the flow. Ethan said, if you can't conform, then you're probably dead. So wave your hammers in the air, bust a few scars, running fingers through your head. This is it. Time for dinner. Dance to this, and you're gonna get thicker. Move, slide, your romance get the ugliest, ready to bump, 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 bump. Yeah, can't stream this. Look, man, you can't stream this. You probably think this is cider hype. You can't stream this. Boy, this is quad stream. Get your spit right. You can't stream this. You can't stream this.
Keep your mouth shut, kid. Never speak about me. Ever in your life. Watch yourself around me. Because you'll be out of here quick. Let me take my picture. Huh? Yeah. Shut your mouth. She's mad. She's getting dead. She's so wobbly. Too slow and too stiff. You're stiff as a board.
Again, it's not hot, the pan!
That's cold.
Touch it, touch. Fuck! It's stone cold!
Here, hold on. Let me get my pose on my belt and my shoe. Huh? Yeah. Shut your mouth.
Yeah, do me a favor. Get out!
To catch a varmint, you gotta be a varmint.
Right? Now? Yes, right. Are you sure?
I used to drag here back in high school.
Conor McGregor.
It's exactly a quarter mile away from here. On green, I'm going for it.
$5 from everyone's favorite irrelevant fallen angel with 0 failed IGG campaigns. Have a good one, Oz. Thank you, Micah. I appreciate it.
Oh, good.
Hello, people of Earth. It is I, Emperor Zerk. As you can tell, this has been pre-recorded. It is because I am out hunting for new Jeffs. Although, it comes to my attention that you may be confused. Jeffs are co-ed. As you can see here, we are aware that you are a dual-sex species, and therefore you should know that it's okay to be a girl Jeff. Wow. That's a lady Jeff right there. Whoa. But yeah. Sign up today. We're out checking them out. Yeah. Oh no, I think I said the wrong thing there. Quick, Jeff, cut the thing. Cut it.
Destiny turned her face, nightmares and violent shapes. State of dreaming has left me numb. Blue eyes and wandering lips, true life through fingertips. Hidden tales of forbidden love. You've left me visions of better times, kingdoms and lie like wine. Why did God fail to improve us? Teardrops of acid rain burning down through my veins. Can't I just sleep for a night? Despite my fears, I dance for you. Even while others move. I can't run away and live again. On desperate.
It's Christmas time and I gotta deal with this shit. Howdy ho. Welcome to CiderTalk. We're gonna open up with this doozy right here from the BBC. That's right. It's now illegal to publish your own fan fiction. How about that? Who knew, right? Even when you call it fan fiction, it's illegal. Gotta love Amazon. Gotta love it. Well, let's take a peek at who's in the chat first before we jump into the fun festivities of this evening. Thank you all for being here, by the way. H is for Heretic stopped by and says Dicks and Cider. Okay. Perette's here, leaving a rock on emoji. That was for earlier. I played a little bit of Gem and the holograms. Beat this. Not beat it or eat it. In fact, Beat This by Gem and the holograms. That's right. If you don't know, fantastic ladies hair band, by the way. If you didn't know, I mean, like, girl cartoon, yeah, but like the music that came out of that, pretty great. Pretty great. Big G's here and he says, woo, my. That's right. That's right. Can't stream this. You got it. Eddie Brock's here and he says, I love that opening. That's right. That is the Chain Gang 1970 something or other. And it's called Sleepwalking. So if you search the Chain Gang Sleepwalking, you'll most likely find the song. Matt Barr's here. Is that Matt Barr? Matt Barr in the chat. Howdy doody. Howdy doody. Henry Thrun stopping by and saying, hail. Ahoy to you, brother. Ahoy to you. Welcome aboard. Has it been 15 minutes of intros? Yes, indeed. That's how we do things on my end of the spectrum. That's how we do things on my end. Wow, you watch so much Gem. Hey, thank you. I don't feel so weird now being like being like a dude that watched that. The music was great, man. Like, if you didn't know, the same people that worked on Transformers worked on Gem. They applied like the same psychology. They just put like glitter and girl stuff on top of it, you know? We'll get into girl stuff here in a little while. But first I want to open up with this though. This is a little annoying, just a smidge. So a fan fiction writer has been sued by the estate of J.R.R. Tolkien for copyright infringement after his own sequel, after publishing their own sequel, this person's own sequel to The Lord of the Rings. A U.S.-based author, Demetrius Polychron. No, that's not real. Like you, you changed your name to that. There ain't nobody named Polychron. Demetrius Polychron, my ass. Anyway, Demetrius Polychron. I see why they sued him with a name like that. Anyway, like a punchable name. You ever come into that? Like just a name you want to punch? Demetrius Polychron published a book called The Fellowship of the King in 2022. He dubbed it the pitch-perfect sequel to The Lord of the Rings. The court ruled that Polychron must stop distributing copies of the book and destroy all physical and electronic copies. In April 2023, Polychron attempted to sue the Tolkien estate and Amazon, claiming the TV series Rings of Power infringed on the copyright of his book. It's a plot twist. It's like one of those M. Night Shyamalan plot twists where you find out the blind girl's actually hot, right? Remember that in The Village? It's always the blind ones. Anyway, the case was dismissed after the judge ruled that Polychron's own book was infringing on Amazon's prequel that was released in September of 2022. This is like, you got your peanut butter and my chocolate. No, you got your chocolate and my peanut butter. The Tolkien estate then filed a separate lawsuit against Polychron for an injunction to stop the Fellowship of the King from being further distributed. On Thursday, Judge Stephen V. Wilson, or Stephen 5 Wilson? You think that's Stephen 5? We got Matt 6 Bar here. You think that's Stephen 5 Wilson? I don't know. Anyway, Judge Stephen V. Wilson called Polychron's lawsuit frivolous and unreasonably filed and granted the permanent injunction preventing him from selling his book and any other planned sequels, of which there were 6. Oh, he was going to Tolkien himself. I see. The estate's UK solicitor, Stephen Mayer of Mayer Blackburn, I assume that's a law firm, said, quote, "This is an important success for the Tolkien estate, which will not permit unauthorized authors and publishers to monetize J.R.R. Tolkien's much-loved works in this way. This case involved a serious infringement of the Lord of the Rings copyright undertaken on a commercial basis. The estate hopes that the award of a permanent injunction and attorney's fees will be sufficient to dissuade others who may have similar intentions." Earlier this year, it was confirmed by Warner Brothers that more Lord of the Rings films, are on their way in the next few years. And Amazon's going to continue fucking it up too. How about that? This is a grand old time, just, destroying this man's legacy, isn't it? It's great. Who wouldn't, right? Who wouldn't, right? Yeah, this is JC's right. It says Amazon is killing sales, putting out these substandard shows. Can't give away these fanfics at this point. It's right. You can't give them away. The shows are worse than the fan fictions. Did you ever think that you'd You'd be in a world where Archive of Our Own kind of like has a superior quality of like story craftsmanship to it than Hollywood. I didn't think I'd live that long, but here we are, man. Matt Barr says all big franchises are fan fiction now. Yeah, that's true. I mean, we saw what happened to Star Wars. They're literally hiring people that don't know anything about the franchise because they want to make sure that their royalties butts are covered. Not royal butts, but the royalties that they would have to pay to other creators that they would be borrowing from, right? So they hire these people that know nothing about the properties, so that way it guarantees them that you won't be pulling subconsciously from media you've absorbed in the past. This is why they'll go out and hire like a fucking brony to write a Star Wars saga, because they can guarantee that that guy's not going to know jack shit about Star Wars, and he's going to bring all this stuff that they don't have to pay royalties on into the property. A la Ryan Roundhead Johnson, right? Remember that? Yeah. Henry Thrun says, okay, so it was because he was profiting off of them. That's right. They're not going to come and attack you because, like, yeah, you're working on your Transformers fan fiction comic, but it'll be free. As far as I know, that's okay. My artist, Leandro Paganibon, is working on a Transformers comic himself. I think it's called Tears of Jupiter, something like that. And they like, he's good to publish it, I guess. I mean, like, not like for money, but he's good to like digitally distribute it or something. I'm not sure. It's quite astonishing, really. I'm not really. You'll have to wait and find out, honestly, how this goes down, because like we saw this with PTP's Last of the Seekers. And as we know, the Seekers are already a group within the Transformers universe that are trademarked on the Transformers toy boxes. So they're the toys that they come in, not like the toy boxes you put all the shit in. I'm sorry, euphemisms. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, like God bless PTP for going out there and making that leap of faith there. But I don't trust Hasbro not to come down on him, especially where their profits are diving so hard lately. So, Perez says, Christy Marks, who wrote for and created Gem, also worked on a lot of other shows like G.I. Joe and Ninja Turtles. So I guess that answers Matt Barr's question earlier. He says, Jen and G.I. Joe are in the same universe. It's Gem. Gem and G.I. Joe are in the same universe. Apparently, at least subconsciously anyway. J Money, J Dollar rather, he asks, where are the guests? That might be later. I wanted to get through talking about girls in media and stuff like that, because Chuck Dixon makes a great case. I'm going to EFAP the stream he was on that he brought this up on. So we're just getting into this because I was like cruising around on Twitter before I wrote up the promotional tweet for this, and I was like, wait a minute, they sued a guy over fan fiction? So, yeah, that's that's where we're at today. Is that the guy published fan fiction. They always leave that headline, right? They leave that. Sorry, I'm just passing on a wrench here to Henry Thrun. I'm a little. Where does that go? Yeah, add as a moderator. Stand. Okay. Hello, welcome aboard. You have a wrench. This is how it works now. And yeah. So anyway, the whole thing is it's pretty screwy to think about this, though, that someone would feel that they could go out and publish something for money on the Tolkien estate. But then again, the guy Tolkien, he's dead, right? So like, where does the copyright trademark end? We're kind of at that with the Spider-Man fiasco with Disney and Mickey Mouse now. So I'm kind of beside myself on this one, fellas. I don't really know how to come down on it. I on one hand, I really wish that Superman was a public domain character, but on the other end, I'm kind of glad given how they've treated Winnie the Pooh now that he's entered the public domain. And so I don't know. This fan fiction thing is a little, I don't know, weird, tricky, but in the end, I think that we'll find that fan fiction is going to end up saving the industry. I wouldn't be surprised if they started eventually just hiring guys like Glenn O'Leary, right? The guys that just have an encyclopedic knowledge of comics and just bringing them in to fix this stuff, Yeah. So Matt Barr says the next Fast and Furious is going to turn into Mask. Oh, cool. Okay, so they have like gadget cars and stuff like that because they had like the Space Fiero. That was neat. The Space Fiero. Yeah, I never thought I'd live in a world where where Fiero went into space. But at least the Tesla car made it first, right? So it doesn't have a claim to fame as being the first car launched into space. But yep. So that's what's happening with the Lord of the Rings. I don't know. We'll have to wait and find out. But I wanted to get to this interview that Chuck Dixon had over on Bounding into Comics with Brett R. Smith. You might remember Brett from the early days of Comicsgate with your boy Zach's Jawbreakers, I believe he was involved with. Not really. I don't quite remember the lore of this because I came on in 2019, in February 2019, so I missed out on like a lot of the brouhaha that went on in the 2018 time period, which apparently was a lot because we're still talking about it in 2023. So anyway, Chuck was on with Brett over on Bounding on the show called The Escape from the Future. And Chuck brought up some interesting points about the current state of the industry, but in particular, he wanted to talk about why what's happened with female audience members. What's gone on with the readership of women in comics, and why that's just been spoiled by third wave feminism.
They actively abandoned the newsstand. I mean, they made a decision. Direct market's where it's at, and a lot of that was pressure from the comic book retailers that they thought the newsstand was competition.
All right, so this part right here, I wanted to start here because Chuck brings up a good point that like exposure is really what he's getting at here. Is exposure is a big problem. Now, regardless of which side you're on, male or female, belong in the comic book place, everybody's got a seat there, whatever. Seeing these damn things precedes all of that. All right, seeing these damn things precedes how the audience for them pees. You know what I mean? And so he's got a good point where when they abandon newsstands, they effectively abandon the supermarket. The comic industry itself sort of retreated back into niche storefronts like comic book stores and bookstores, and just really vanished off of where kids in general would stumble upon them, and became more of these things you had to seek out. Whereas like Pokemon just started showing up everywhere, for example. You couldn't go anywhere without Pokemon card packages poking out of everywhere. I remember that. But this is what Chuck starts off with, is that not only have they screwed up with this whole effort to create like this feminine bubble market, I guess, inside of the larger comics audience, but they've abandoned how to get it there to begin with.
Now, why they couldn't understand that? No, the newsstand isn't competition. The newsstand is your entry market.
Right.
And if you don't have an entry market, you're not going to have a place where a kid first sees a comic book.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have that, never going to walk into a comic book shop.
Right.
And just like I said, you can't just take these things away from where children get, like, their first taste of it. Unless you have like a parent or an older sibling or a family member to bring you to a comic book shop or a specialty shop, you're not going to run into these things. They vanished. You had to be like some high flying ticket in order to end up on the grocery store shelves, and even then, the grocery store had to request that stuff. They didn't get pull lists or anything like that. They got whatever Diamond wanted to drop off, if it was even Diamond. I don't know.
Nobody goes into a comic book shop cold. You only go into a comic book shop if you're a comic book fan.
Yeah.
Boingo boingo. Here we are, right? You only go into a comic book shop if you're a fan. You're not just like wandering down the street, like you see a pair of Nikes in the window and you go, damn, I'd look good in those. That's not how that works. You don't see a Superman comic in the window and think, damn, I could take a lot of Tinder selfies with this.
Yeah.
You talk to like, normal people that aren't
normal people. You remember them? Do you remember normies?
Fans aren't into it.
Yeah.
Hey, you know there's a comic book shop in your town? They don't know.
Mhm.
They might even go to the Publix in the strip mall where the comic shop is. They just never noticed it.
Yeah, right. It's not a feature anymore. It's not a gathering point even. Like we see this with Glenn O'Leary's shop when you go over to his channel, the Comics Palace there. When you go over there and take a look at what actually is happening is that Glenn does have a thriving market going, but it's for these people that are legacy. Like he had a couple kids in this shop in this shop like a couple episodes back. But for the most part, Glenn is dealing with a market that is over 40. And this is Chuck's point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, because like you said, it's a boutique niche market, and they actively, willingly, knowingly turned it into that.
Mm-hmm.
I always say that if the carrot industry was run the way comics were, within a year you'd have people saying, "Remember carrots?
Remember carrots? You remember Super Carrot? Remember Bat Carrot? How about Wonder Carrot?
They still make them." And that's what they've done. It's because comics have always been an accident. I mean, they were created as a default to keep presses running. And then the publishers were surprised when they actually sold. And that attitude has not changed.
It's really not. I mean, if you look at the origins of Doomsday, who arguably is the most usurpitous, I guess, if that's a word it is now. All right, you're welcome, English. Usurpitous. He's the, usurping expectation-ish kind of character where he actually killed Superman. I mean, they punched each other to death, but he killed Superman, which again was unheard of by this standard. The actual death of Superman as they attempted to play it out before realizing how dumb that was. But that was a mistake. Arguably, and if you asked anybody on the street today, the death of Superman was a mistake. Even normies who don't know Superman that well know that he died and it wasn't good. It wasn't like one of those honorable kind of death things where people were like, wow, Superman went out on a high note, No, they all remember, everybody remembers that as being a bad choice. But it sent shockwaves. We're still talking about it. Max Landis got hired at DC because of his critique of Doomsday's arc. Okay? So it's just, I'm sad, just saying, like, everything that has ever worked with comics has always been well, if it fucks up, we'll just stop publishing it, boys. It's that simple,
Well, the other thing, something else we've talked about is that.
Right, you're going to segment over into the next topic about girls now, but I just wanted to get into that, And, JEC says magazine sales in stores are dead. They can't even move prawn magazines at this point, let alone comics. Right. This is another thing that I bring up. It's not as simple as just piling these things back in front of kids again. They don't know what the hell they are. Yes, they know what the fuck a book is. Yes, they know what a comic is, but they don't know it in the familial sense of like, I trust this product to deliver something to me. They know that comics have made like goofy movies like Captain Marvel and Birds of Prey, just stuff that just completely goes over their head because of the political messaging. Meanwhile, manga's over here just humbly, humming away with 1,000 fucking volumes of One Piece, right? So this is the point, is that you've got to teach these kids to trust this stuff again. You've got to get them back interested in it again. And the way to do that, as Chuck explained, is to expose them to it again. But as I've outlined earlier in another show as well, is that YouTube has like a premium thing and there are ad blockers now you can install to your browsers. Like Brave has one built in, for instance. So how does an advertising company get around that? They don't, right? So they purposely go out and enrage you. They purposely go out and make things to piss you off so that people will talk about it on YouTube and Rumble and Twitter and Instagram and so on and so forth. So that does the advertising for them, gets around the ad blocks. What their gamble is that so many of these people will be completely turned off of the product completely. But these other group of people, who may be a tiny percentage, but this other group of people, having not been exposed to the media at all up until this point, or at least not made aware of what they're being shown, will take a risk on it. Or an even smaller percentage really like this media and want to seek it out, purchase it, and participate in it, right? That's their gamble by pissing you off because they can't get around the advertising. Right now, think to yourself right now, how do you reach a 12-year-old if you're selling them a book? How? Apart from Scholastic? Apart from, I don't know, making a cartoon? If you don't have that money, let's say you're like Marvel and DC and you're eating cat food to keep your business going, right? So consider that the only way to do this is to get people like Nerdrotic and Bounding into Comics, Fandom Pulse, EVS, Tug, Yellow Flash, JDA to talk about this stuff. And of course, that gambling I talked about earlier is what they're playing on. They're hoping that there's a percentage enough out there that sees this stuff and responds positively to it, or at least neutrally. Henry Thrun says, now the kids have so much history of movies and TV shows they can watch, there's really no reason to go back to the comics. And again, this would be true if manga wasn't so popular. But we understand that the manga section is like taking over this BAM store that Nerdrotic visits in like Houston or something, or Dallas or something. It's gigantic. And then the manga section has just taken over the entirety of the youth section. It's just swallowed it up. There's like a bookshelf that's maybe like 4 feet wide, 6 feet tall. That's like dedicated to comics, American comics. The rest of that entire floor of youth graphic novels is just manga. So I can't say that the kids aren't interested in the sequential art, in the maybe serialized or episodic storytelling, however you approach it, but mostly serialized in comics and manga. I can't say that they're not interested in it. I can't say that they're not interested in reading because like webtoons and whatever, is it Titas, something like that? Titas, I don't know. But whatever this other platform is that does like the webtoons doodad, those are thriving. They're doing great. And it to be completely honest, like IGN did a poll of their younger participants, like their like teenage demographic. And what they found is these kids don't want sex in their media at all. They never did, but they don't want it anymore. You know what I mean? They're tired of it. They're like exhausted from all the agenda. It's not superhero fatigue. It's agenda fatigue that everybody's kind of like done with, if you will. So then Matt Barr says, miss Cosmic Comics. He misses Cosmic Comics. Places was always packed with people talking and spending money, 95 and 99. Yeah, back in comics was at its, I would say at its apex, really, the height of it. Yep. He says, Eisner's The Dreamers goes into a lot of the early comic industry. Yep. JEC says it's the anime that sells the manga. It was once animated shows when we were kids, like Batman, X-Men, Spider-Man, that made us all fans. The shows are how you make those kids fans. Well, it's true. We know this from the manga industry, and they've said this over and over again, that they deliberately make the adaptation into anime a little bit different than the manga in order to drive you into the manga purchase, because the manga is where they make their money. Not in the anime, not in the action figures, not on the printed panties. They make their money on the manga. That's the highest profit to investment ratio they have as far as the Japanese printed entertainment market goes. And so that's, again, like he's not wrong that the cartoons got us into this. And again, like they failed on this front because the media is mostly like aimed at adults. Like look at the Harley Quinn cartoon. That is in no way meant for anybody really under 30, but definitely not for anybody under 18. Do they sponsor their favorite Minecraft streamer? Something like that. Yeah, topless Minecraft streamer mainly over there on Twitch. You do me. No, I'm all set, man. So you know what it is? Okay, good for you, dude. I'm glad. We're all on the same page. Henry Thrun asks, do manga and anime have a bunch of different versions of characters and rebooting the way the US does? I wonder if that plays a part. It definitely does. Like, think right now, if you met somebody like, you know, a youth that's interested in comics in general, or maybe saw, like, played a Batman game, like, you know, those are pretty popular. Played a Batman game, right? So think about that. What would you tell that kid? Where would he start reading Batman? You know, when they ask you, where do I start with One Piece? You put your hand on their shoulder, and you look them in the eye and you say, well, you've got a lot of time left in your life, and you're probably going to need every last second to catch up. But there's 1,000 issues, 1,000 volumes of One Piece, and you could start at number 1. Now, what do you do? You can't tell that to somebody to start at Batman number 1, because there's 6, 7, 8, 12 different Batman number 1s now. And of those number 1s, they could take place in an alternate universe. They only got 6 issues, and then either got canceled or they just were done with it. You know, do you tell them to pick up with Azrael? Do you tell them to pick up with 66 Batman? Where do you go with them? You know, it's really a big part of this, is that the Japanese manga industry really survives spiritually on a character-driven narrative. Goku can go anywhere. Naruto can go anywhere. Ichigo can go anywhere. The Demon Slayer kid, Tanjiro, can go anywhere. Who am I like missing here? Another character that's important. Deku from My Hero Academia can go anywhere, because these characters contain their story. You see, the way the Japanese do this is that it's the character's own decision making that is driving the plot of the story, not the other way around. In American comics, it's moral driven. The majority of our storytelling is moral driven. At the end of the comic, the hero's standing on top of something while the sun sets in the background. They're holding the American flag, and they espouse something close to brush your teeth and stay in school. You know, and that's been like the biggest kind of hiccup with competing with manga and anime all along, is that American comics like to be very episodic. They like to be very contained. That's why we keep hearing about this run here and run there, and you heard about this guy's run and that guy's run. No. Akira Toriyama is like 1 billion years old. He's not drawing Dragon Ball Z anymore. He's barely giving any direction on it, but he's giving direction on it. And that's how this story has stayed semi-coherent over like 40 years now. It's the same thing with Ichiro Oda doing One Piece. The way the story has stayed semi-consistent over the years, and why you can continue to follow it and it has a through thread from the very first, is because it's the same guy. Now ask yourself, had they done this with Batman and Bill Finger, or whoever you credit with the creation of Batman, had they done this with Simon and Schuster, and had these guys just stayed through until they died with these characters, how different would they be? You know, how different would the story be if Superman didn't, like, sure, maybe he gained new powers and lost powers and things like that, but he stayed that same golden age spirited man all the way up through until Simon and Schuster died, right? It'd be a very different character. And I can't tell you if that's superior or not. I can't tell you if that's the smarter way to do it. I can't tell you if that's the safer way to do it even. But from what we can see right now, the youth take to it better because they have an easier vehicle to get into, right? Because Luffy and Naruto and Deku and the rest of them, they don't ask you to adopt a world when you want to imagine yourself as them. Goku doesn't either. You know, these characters, they don't ask you to adopt their entire world. What they do is they ask you to adopt their morality, their beliefs. Now, I told you they're moral-driven comics are the problem, right, in the West, but that's the moral driving it, like a roller coaster track. Like, we've got to get Superman to the brush your teeth and stay in school moral, so at the end of the book. So everything that goes on in the book has to feed that. Where the Japanese do this is that from the get-go, Goku is all about brushing your teeth and staying in school. This is a metaphor, by the way. This isn't actually how it works. But this is why the Japanese method appears to be working better, is that the characters themselves contain what is vital to the story that keeps the readers interested. And so this is why Goku is like, he's like transforming into a But he killed a fucking planet. He's a death god now, angel wings and shit. And he was just some weird little kid that with a monkey tail. He started out as a weird little kid, monkey tail. That's it. Like talk about getting like way overgrown with ideas, But that's why the Japanese model appears to be more successful than the American model, is that the same person that created the idea is carrying it on, like, mostly hands-on in the case of Akira Toriyama. Henry Thrun asks, have they found the treasure in One Piece yet? Nope. No, they haven't. They have not. Oda says they're getting close, but he said that for like 10 years now. In Japan, they have a rule. If it sells, it continues being made, right? This is why Dragon Ball is still going. This is why One Piece is still going. This is why they've revived Naruto now. They're not doing Boruto with his son anymore. They're doing Naruto again, little 14-year-old orange, ignorant Naruto again. They're doing that all over again, whole new anime series. And that's the rule. If it sells, it continues to get made. It doesn't matter if it works or not. Until it falls out of popularity, it has to go on. There's no end to it. Bob Kane, my bad. Bob Kane, Billfinger, my apologies. I'm not up on that. Siegel and Schuster, I apologize. Not on it today. Nanji says, One Piece pirate crew found the One Piece. I'm sorry. It's implied that it's not a literal treasure, but it's something that can completely overthrow and delegitimize the current world government once left. Oh, so they haven't got it. Yeah. So it's like a right to power, apparently. But that's okay. Honestly, I'm honestly surprised it's not like friendship. Friendship is the key to One Piece. Ink Cowboy says manga is more generous with ideas. You have more than one Superman by different names. One or two Superman win. Well, yeah. Again, like the amount, what do they call those analogs, right? Like Star Supreme's an analog of Superman's, but in the same way that like Sentry is, I guess. That. Yes, it fly. Yes, there's laser vision. Yes, there's invulnerability to certain weaponry and things like that. So super strength, that kind of thing. But in Japan, they tend to put a heavier spin on that sort of thing. Like here in the US, there's like Gladiator and Sentry and that other guy with the nuclear symbol on his dick. Then there's like other Superman, there's Ultraman, obviously, and then whatever the hell the Daxamites were and all that stuff, which were just like, hey, what if Superman had like a different origin story and a different name, really? But the Japanese tend to lean a little differently into it. Like One Punch Man, for instance, isn't really about this guy having this crazy power and stuff like that. It's really about how he got it. Nobody knows, and he doesn't know how he became this godlike power. And then, in fact, his greatest adversary is calling itself, and apparently is God with the capital G. So it's, again, like the story isn't about how powerful this character is. The story is about why they're that powerful. That's the twist they put on it. It's because they have a holistic view on the world. Whereas we have an individualist view of the world. The West tends to view things as the world is at the tip of our fingers, and the East tends to view it as we are part of the world in the sense of like a grand machine. So, yeah. JEC says, UCEVS read Jerry Siegel's letter to DC Comics accusing them of stealing Superman from him and leaving him and his family out in the cold to starve to death. Yep. I know all about that stuff. I just get their names screwed up because I'm big brain. I'm real big brain. JEC says, most people say Bill Finger created most of what appeared in Batman, but Bob Kane stole all the credit. Oh, okay. Another one of those. It's like how I tell the Spider-Man story that, Stan Lee was 44 before he took credit for Spider-Man. But Ink Cowboy says it's been somewhat revealed Saitama's limiter disappeared. Yeah, it's one of those things like it's teased out, sure, but That's the main focus of One Punch Man's story is why is he this powerful, not that he is that powerful. So that's why it remains superior. Henry Thrun says, I have a hard time keeping names and labels straight too. Hey, there's a bajillion and a half stories out there, and I'm sure I'm still underestimating it. So don't feel bad, man. It's the internet too. So you're gonna run into people that like saw an anime that aired once in northern Japan and like 1986 and then was never heard from again. You know, don't worry, man. There's gonna be a lot of strange stuff.
It's always been a male centric or it's been an industry which has been driven for male readers, for boys.
Not always.
Okay.
Not always. 50s and 60s, it was girls buying the comics.
Romance.
Girls drove the comic book market. With
Was that
Archie, romance.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Young Romance sold 3.5 million copies a month.
All right. Now you and I both know that the chicks dig those romance novels. They're the only ones that keep them alive. I doubt the gay guys are even reading them that much, right? So I want you to ask yourself, when was the last time you saw a legitimate romance plot in a comic? Like a real legitimate one. Not that time Talia al Ghul raped Batman in order to make Damian and a slew of like test tube baby reject clones. Not that. Not Jonathan Kent and his weird OnlyFans twink boyfriend in the bathtub thing. Not that. That's not romance. When was the last time you saw a legitimate romance play out in a comic? I mean, I come to the game late, so I mean, like, I didn't get to see it. I don't recall one even in the early 2000s. Like, I don't consider Batman and Catwoman to be a legitimate romance. I'm sorry. That is one person taking advantage of the other, and that's Catwoman being incredibly manipulative to Batman because that's how the story always goes. So I don't consider that one right. Lois and Clark, absolutely. Oliver Queen and oh no, I forgot her name. Black Canary, anyway, whatever her alternate ego is. But you know what I mean? Those are the romances that I would consider legitimate. Scott Summers and Jean Grey. I don't consider Emma Frost to be a legitimate relationship. That's another case of manipulation. But when was the last time? When was the last time you saw a legitimate romance in a comic? Yeah. Yeah, Java nerd. Indeed. Nerds. But that's why we're here, right? That's what the hashtag's all about. Welcome aboard. You like my haircut? I got a tan and everything. It was really cool. Of course, that tan's gonna be gone as soon as I and the haircut too, as soon as I go on camera next. But like for right now, it looks really sweet, right? Yeah, no, I don't see the chat lighting up with like all these times that there was a romance comic in the last, I don't know, decade, right? So you guys get it. You guys know. It's pretty dire out there. I mean, even as men, right? We're not like hard up for this like werewolf is my boyfriend kind of crap. But you know, you feel it when Clark is holding Lois and they're flying over the city with in that Donner Superman. You feel that shit. I know you do. You know, you feel that shit when Aragorn and Arwen are like talking to each other and she's pledging herself to him. You feel that shit. You feel that. But that's not in comics. Batman's getting fucking cheated on by Catwoman at a stripper club with an Aquaman stripper. That's what happens to our Cape Crusader, the good guy. He gets cheated on because he's the good guy. That's the lesson to take away from it, right, Tom King?
For years. You had lots of romance titles. You had Archie, and girls were reading regular comics too. They were reading Little Lulu and Uncle Scrooge and Green Lantern. And my sisters read Green Lantern because they thought Hal Jordan was cute. So we've and it totally abandoned that market.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you know this or not, but Gundam, right? Mobile Suit Gundam, the original anime that came out, right? It wasn't a manga first. It was an anime first. It was intended to sell toys, but Tomino, being the crafty man that he is, tricked Sunrise into giving him funding to create a war drama. All right? Something that hadn't been done with the giant robot genre up until that point. There have been space operas, certainly, like Star Wars and the Galaxy of Heroes or something like that. Yeah. And so you had those sort of things play out, but Tomino created a war drama in which children died even in the first few episodes. Horrible, terrible war crimes took place in those first few episodes of the Mobile Suit Gundam series, and innocent people died in it. Now, that didn't go over well with the Saturday morning cartoon audience established in Japan at the time. At the time. But wouldn't you know, as the show was allowed to keep going, because it had a very strange rating in the afternoon going on, around the time just before kids got home from school. And it turned out that after about 6 months of being aired on Japanese television, that women were the ones supporting Gundam in droves, by the way, in droves. It wasn't just a pocket of them. Nationally, Gundam was a hit with women. And they were writing into Tomino to express their absolute astonishment with the bravery he's displayed by creating a war drama on a Saturday morning cartoon, and how deep and reverent characters like Char and Amuro are, and their struggle to maintain their own sense of purity and justice. It resonated with women. And so Gundam was kept alive by ladyfolk. So this is Chuck Dixon, like, literally telling you how this stuff works. This is the truth of it. That ladyfolk like that interpersonal drama. They like that tearjerker emotional stuff, like a character that doesn't deserve to die getting, deathed. Maybe not brutally, but rather abruptly, certainly. Because like Gundam for a while didn't do the whole like excruciating death thing. They did the whole you blow up and that was that. Sometimes you had an afterlife sequence, but most of the time you just blew the fuck up. That was it. There wasn't any like, body parts being shredded off as someone dies slowly. It wasn't Berserk. So, but so when Chuck talks about this stuff, he's right that the ladyfolk kept stuff that has like an emotional depth to it alive through the parts that aren't exactly flashy for young men who like their pew pew war drama to be more shooty and less emotional, I guess.
And they don't know how to get it back. They think third wave feminist comic book stories are going to bring girls back to read. No, they're not. Because girls, your female readerships. I was successful on Nightwing because I was writing the kind of story that girls like too. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of interrelationship. There was a more dense plot. It wasn't just about guys punching each other.
All right. There's the secret sauce, right? Like, even as guys, we appreciate this. I mean, sure, everybody loves that rock'em sock'em, shoot 'em up kind of situation, man against an army. The Arnold Schwarzenegger kind of setup where he's running across a front lawn of the White House with a minigun on his hip, just leveling henchmen, that kind of thing, And sure, everybody loves that, right? But like the stories that stick with you are the ones that have that kind of that reach into the mythical sense of yourself, even that reach into that impossible version of yourself, the one that does all that rooftop brooding like Nightwing and Batman, right? And those stories have to have some kind of emotional connective tissue to them. They can't just be cool guy doing cool thing, because that's really neat. But once you put the book down, that's it. It's over with. That really neat thing is over as soon as you're not looking at it. But for me, a story like Kingdom Come is my favorite comic to begin with. It's my favorite Superman comic as well. And Kingdom Come, apart from being beautiful to look at, tells a really, really difficult story. Superman has been morally defeated. And this is something that's never really done with him. He's usually the guy that comes out on top who's got the best idea. It may take him a little while to get to that idea, but once he's there, he's on top. This is at least in my recollection as a kid, this was the first time that Superman really got put on his ass by the public. Public opinion was against him, like legitimately. It wasn't this scheme for Lex Luthor to steal 40 cakes. This was like a legitimate public saying, no, we want to murder our villains. Enough is enough. You superheroes are just playing games with them. We need Magog to go out and beat the hell and murder these people, And so Superman put his hands up and said, I'm done. I give up. I'm over it. It's done. I'm going to go the Fortress of Solitude and I'm going to chill the fuck out. and you guys are going to leave me alone, and I'm going to leave you alone, and that'll be the end of it. Now, as a man, you can resonate with this when somebody who's way over the fucking top shows up, and people really think that's hot and cool, and then their opinion of him sours after a while, right? Their opinion of that really spicy, edgy, snowplow kind of attitude wears thin on people after a while. And this is what we saw happen in the Kingdom Come story, is that yes, the public was very much for this, and then they started paying the price for it. And in the end, Superman's right. And as a man, you resonate with that. You've had times in your life when you even doubted your own like sense of right and wrong and justice, and and then you came back to your senses. You had like some moment of clarity, or something reminded you, or even you evolved into a more superior sense of right and wrong. And so you resonate with that kind of storytelling versus today where they're like, oh, John Kent's gay, and the whole story is about them being gay, and the whole superhero antic thing is on the side, right? You got Mystique, like, I don't know, being like a tanker truck for cum now, I guess. That's how that happened. She stored Azazel's jizz, I guess, in her left pocket or something. I don't know. And then put it into Destiny. I mean, isn't that rape? That feels an awful lot like rape, right? Like, Destiny didn't want to boink Azazel, let alone give birth to his kid. And then how does he end up? How did Nightcrawler end up blue? I don't understand. Mystique's not part of the genetic equation anymore. She's just a jizz tanker. So I don't know. I don't understand. They don't understand either. They just wanted to make it happen. And that's where you're at now, is that, yeah, Mark Wade's a piece of shit, sure, but a broken clock is right twice a day, okay? And I'll give Mark Wade credit. Kingdom Come is probably the best of his works, if not the best of his works. And so and then again, like, you'll run into stories that suck out loud from this guy. Don't worry. They're everywhere. He's not some gifted every time a home run kind of guy. No. This was a once in a lifetime thing for him to create something like Kingdom Come. But now you got something wildly different out there. Yeah. Henry Thrun says, honestly, I quit Spider-Man comics when they dissolved Peter's marriage. I wrote Marvel and got a response from Brovert. Oh, wow. Yeah, I'm late and missed it. Surely women want badass women who act like men. No, you wait. He explains it a little further here.
Same thing for Spider-Man. Spider-Man was successful for so long because of the soap opera elements.
Right.
And I call those soap opera elements, but it's kind of a pejorative. It's more complex human relationships in the story.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what it is. It's more complex than like the Joes. It's more complex than Mask, as we saw earlier. Those guys, not the guy with the green face, but the people with the fancy cars and helmets. It's a little more complex than even Captain Planet and the Planeteers. That's the kind of storytelling that Chuck is talking about, that women are attracted to. Is this, a lot of women will tell you that they like the Harley Quinn Joker thing. That's not because Joker slaps her around. I'm sure some of them find that exciting because there's twisted people out there everywhere. But the majority of women like the desperation in that relationship. They like how high stakes it is. They like the kind of scandal involved with being a lover of a criminal and taking part in his crazy, sometimes murderous antics, most of the time murderous. They like that concept, that risky business thing. It's why Bonnie and Clyde lived on to be some crazy urban legend for us, where they vastly outgrew what their deeds were in real life because of people's attraction to the fatal, the fatally fated felon couple, right? They love that. Ladyfolk love that. There's a whole series called Scandal that's about that whole concept about being a criminal and hiding your identity and being involved with a high stakes family and all this jazz. It's they love that stuff. They eat it up. But that isn't like, and again, like, you can't do that wall to wall, right? Because then you've created something like 50 Shades of Grey, and that only appeals to women. So you don't go completely in the opposite direction, right? Like we've seen this with these women on the telephone in the comics, right? Whole pages dedicated to just a person sitting center of a damn panel and their mouth opening and closing like it's a flip book that somebody forgot to compile. Is Mark Wade the guy who beats women? It's Mark Quaid. Martin Quaid. Martin Quaid is the woman beater. Yeah, he's the woman beater. Ink Cowboy says it's kind of relevant that Stan Lee's publisher was doing romance comics up to the point of Fantastic Four, and Fantastic Four and other early Marvel stuff incorporated the soap opera. Well, yeah, Reed and Sue's like very complicated relationship, and then Ben ending up dating the blind lady there, and sort of that strange dynamic with that. And of course, Johnny having his gal pals coming and going. There was a lot of stuff in their opinions of all of that with each other, right? That's why they were a family. They weren't a unit. You know what I mean? They weren't a military unit. They were a family. They fought with each other. They had opinions about each other. They dismissed and judged one another.
Yeah, and women like reading about that stuff, and guys like it too, but they won't admit it.
They do. I mean, to me, it's melodrama, and I think you have to have that mixed in with the action in order to tell a compelling story. It just can't be wall-to-wall action, but it really does seem that it's like this one-size-fits-all now. We're just going to make comics for everybody. We're not going to cater to girls. We're not going to cater to boys with certain titles or certain ideas. And I think that's a failure on their part as well, where you've just kind of given up on the things that get young boys excited and interested in these characters.
Well, I mean, Twitch is getting young boys excited, but I think that's illegal.
Don't see it anymore.
Well, no, because they're going to reject what they see. Like they've rejected so much of things. I mean, comics aren't the only thing suffering.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, look at the population of people going on to college and university. It's 70% female.
Yeah, he's not lying. For every 100 bachelor degrees given out in 2020, 74 of them went to women. That's right. Only 19% of college applicants in 2021 were men. And this isn't like something that's like, oh yeah, it's just the entertainment industry that's infected by this. It's just academia and the entertainment industry. It's just news media and the entertainment industry. It's all of it. It's all of it everywhere, all the time, and intentional, as you all know. But Chuck points out here that women do like the interpersonal drama, and as Brett illustrated, underlined, if you will, it's the melodrama, in fact. So it's the stuff that isn't so much someone's going to die. It's the emotional kind of drama that sort of pushes this. Like I said with Harley and the Joker, it's not so much that he's abusive and a murderous criminal that keeps them going. It's the fact that there's so much intensity, and there's so much up and down and need for each other and emotional high to that attracts them, because that's intriguing to lady folk. On average, not everybody obviously, but on average, that's intriguing to lady folk. And just as men like a mystery like Sherlock Holmes, or the Dresden Files, that sort of thing, lady folk like having an emotional mystery, if you will. So will they, won't they is kind of a key to getting lady folk interested in these stories, as Chuck and Brett are talking about.
Because guys get to university. This happened to me in 1972. I went to orientation at Temple University and thought, they don't want me here. A white guy from the suburbs, I'm not welcome here. Right. They don't want me. So I didn't go. And that has to happen over and over and over and over again, that either at orientation or by the end of the freshman year, the guy says, no, I'm not, I am persona non grata here. And my parents are paying a fortune for me to be here, so I'm out. Yeah. And we're seeing that across the board. I mean,
so look at this, right? He's not just talking about comics, right? He's talking about the university. He's not just talking about this. Think about this from a young man's perspective, right? From a young guy who wants to get into comics because his dad and his uncle and his older brother were, right? So he's like, I'm going to get into Batman. Well, here comes Kate Kane. And she's better than Batman and everything, and even overshadows him in his own self-titled comics. Well, how about that? That's neat. Cool. Oh, and Robin's gay now. Oh, okay, that's cool. That's very helpful. All right, well, the kid's gonna go try Superman. Oh, Superman's gay now. Instead, he's not actually gay like Clark Kent. Clark Kent's trapped on a war world where he's running around in a fur thong without his powers, leading some kind of cuck rebellion. So neat. Cool. All right, I guess I'll go try Wonder Woman. Okay, cool. She's having sex with like a cancer kid out in the middle of the woods somewhere, and then he's shooting arrows at her and like confessing that he's gay or something. Okay, neat. And then that kid goes and picks up My Hero Academia, which is basically Marvel for the Japanese, and loves it. He loves it because it's about a boy, which he happens to be. And that boy is discovering who he is in this world and finding the reality of his identity isn't quite what he wanted it to be, and grappling with that, which again, a lot of young men tend to do. Okay. What do you tell these kids? Right? Like I told you earlier, what do you tell this kid that wants to get into Batman? Where does he start? You can't. Just like this, what do? You can't tell him to go buy a new Batman comic. You can't tell him to go buy the new #1 because it's got nothing to do with Bruce. It's all about everybody else and how gay they are. And that's what's happening. So just like he says at orientation, he's looking around and saying, man, I don't belong here, right? Same thing with the comic book kids. Same thing with the young guys that are looking around at this industry, at what's offered to them, especially in this current time. And they're saying, man, there's no place for me here. But here's manga who's like, hey, you like big titties? You like guys overcoming their like social awkwardness? You like young men arising into like from lamb to lion status? You like a follower becoming a leader? Okay, man, we got you covered in every kind of genre imaginable. You like it in Giant Robots? We got that story in Giant Robots. You like that with Kung Fu? We got it in Kung Fu. You like it with samurais, ninjas? Hell, if you like it in fucking tennis, we got you covered. There's a fucking manga out there right now about a guy with a two-tailed cat. And it is one of the best-selling manga with like 12-year-old boys, right? Because you want to know why? Because this guy is having wacky adventures with his cat. That's it. They're not going out and discovering their gender. He's not fucking the cat. The cat's just weird. And they're going on adventures together because the cat's weird. And it leads them to weird places. And they meet weird people. That's it.
The streaming services, movie attendance, television series, everything else falling apart because they're not aiming it at an audience that actually wants to see. Look what Disney did. Spent $8 billion to get 2 male-oriented franchises and immediately turn them into girly stories.
Now, here's the secret. You probably didn't think about this until now or until recently, but Disney's always been a girl brand. Okay? Surprise. They may have done some masculine things, but more than likely they were just sponsoring the production of those things, and they were handled out of house. Okay, like Tron's something that stands out, right? That they produce that's fairly masculine, right? Even the reboot of it, or rather the continuation, is fairly masculine. However, Disney itself, by and large, front to back, up to down, is a girls' brand. There's a reason why Disney Princess is more recognizable than Disney Star Wars. I mean, on our end, it's like we respond to Disney Star Wars first, obviously, but in Normieville, Disney Princess is the more recognizable statement. Okay, and that's what Chuck's talking about. Is like these guys went and bought Marvel and they bought Star Wars, and these are very, very masculine brands. Obviously, they've been boy brands from the start. But of course, they appeal to female audiences because of what Chuck talked about earlier, the interpersonal drama, the melodrama, that sort of thing. And that's what they did is they just like, I don't know, poured Miracle Grow on that crap. And that's what they decided was going to be the whole defining thing, that the battles and the war and the honor were all going to take a back seat to this agenda that dismantles the nuclear family. It dismantles what gender identity is. It dismantles gender roles. It dismantles the identity of America. Now, I know that you didn't watch Star Wars and think, God damn, I love America. But that's wall-to-wall American propaganda. The same thing with Marvel. Marvel at one point was a propaganda rag, if you remember. There's old Adolf getting socked in the kisser by Captain America on a cover. You know? They've been with it since the beginning.
Yeah, Chris Gore talked about that. Disney's they already have their princess line. Why do you need to take characters that are typically male-centric or things that boys like and turn them into princesses? I don't understand this at all.
It's like it was the only thing they knew how to do.
And he's right. It's the only thing they knew how to do. Because Disney, again, is not a boy brand-oriented franchise, corporation, whatever. They're really not. Even when they were producing cartoons for their show, the Disney Channel, for their Disney Channel show, it still carried a heavy feminine influence in it. It wasn't like Nickelodeon's gross out cartoons and stuff like that, like Real Monsters and Ren and Stimpy after it fell off MTV. You get these kind of like real extreme interpretations of surreal environments, right? This extreme surrealism in the Nickelodeon cartoons from that early era, whereas the Disney cartoons that were coming out, like the Hercules cartoon, for instance, was very, very feminine influenced and very, very soft in the way that it animated things even. And it kept that kind of flowy, graceful movement to it, whereas like the Nickelodeon cartoons relied on a lot of like frame skipping and abrupt changes in anatomy and things like that to shock you, that sort of thing, and amuse you, for instance.
But their stated intent, I remember reading about this extensively when they bought Marvel and Lucasfilm, was they needed material for boys. They didn't have anything for boys in their library. And then they, screwed both of them up in the worst possible ways you can imagine.
Yeah.
And they did. But we know. We've lived through it all. We've witnessed it all. But they did. They deliberately went out and did this. There was nobody who sat down and said, no, you can't make Daredevil take off his shoes and do the slut shame walk home. No, you can't do that to Daredevil. There was nobody who did that. Not even Charlie What's-His-Face got to say anything about that. Nope. That happened. That happened to Daredevil, a Catholic superhero. Like expressly Catholic at that. Blind, too. Walking home in broad daylight in bright yellow and mauve. All right? After a very suggestive, intimate scene with She-Hulk, okay? Now, if they're interested in making a boy brand, boy, did they fuck that up now, didn't they? And here comes Echo coming through with this, like, I don't know, an internet superhero randomizer AI of like a backstory and power set. Like the literal I'm all the things, like a bingo card of diversity, And so what are they doing, right? We're not getting any more Iron Man. We're not going to get any more Captain America that's proper anymore. We're just going to get Captain America that tells us to hate America. And again, like, this is not masculine. Masculinity is, I'm sorry, nationalism. When you think of a masculine man, he's typically carrying a country's flag. Could be any country. It doesn't have to be ours. It doesn't have to be the Soviets. It doesn't have to be the French, German, anything. When you think of like the peak masculine man, he's typically oriented with patriotism. When you're not just picturing Mr. Universe flexing in front of a group of people, when you think of that traditional mythical masculine man, the peak masculine man, he's typically nestled in nationalism. And again, like when we say that America is exceptional, great. We need to say that. So does Germany. So does Japan. So does Italy. So does everybody else. Everybody needs to say that they're the best country in the world. I don't see a problem in that. I don't have a problem. I don't see a problem with anybody saying they're number one. China does it. Why can't anybody else? I think the whole world should be made up of number ones, right? Because if you start thinking that your country's the best, you're going to start acting like it. You're going to start treating your country like it's the best. But you go around telling your citizenry, this place is a shithole. It was built on blood. It's not legitimate because it was built on hatred, and slave owners created this place to facilitate their horrible racist ways. When you go around telling your citizenry that, well, here's America.
Yeah, it's amazing how bad they've been at this. But like we were talking about, we have seen other studios like Netflix and Amazon course correct, and I think make some stuff that guys really do love, and want to show up for, like Terminalist, like Reacher. Paramount's got Tulsa King. They've got I think Yellowstone. That's another one which I think brings in the guys and the girls.
Yeah, that's a phenomenon.
All right, so what they're talking about is that like action porn genre, right? Not like actual porn where they're going out and like having sex or anything, but it's the action, the verb action porn, if you will. And you remember these are the Stallone flicks. These are the old Schwarzenegger flicks. The old Bruce Willis stuff. That's what they're talking about. Is this, and people do respond positively to this. We're human beings. A lot of people forget that we're only like 80 years out of using outdoor plumbing. Like here in Maine, it was only the 1970s that it became building code that plumbing had to be inside, like a law that it had to be inside. It had to be indoor plumbing, not an outhouse, or not an outdoor bathroom, if you will. And so, we're only a few decades from that. Like in only like 200 years ago, we had to like go out and hunt for food in groups. Otherwise, we'd be overwhelmed by mountain lions, coyotes, or a native tribe who didn't like us hunting on their land. And so this escapes us because we have our fancy smartphones and our lattes and our plug-in cars and those vibrating butt plugs that all the little sluts on OnlyFans are excited about, And so you end up with like a society that has completely forgotten what's important to them. And all of a sudden there's this 6-foot-something guy who's got a big gun, broad shoulders, and he's mowing down people who you just assume are the bad guys because the bright music is playing and there's a bunch of explosions going off in front of the guy and behind the guy, not on top of the guy. So he's the good guy, right? And people respond positively to that. The women like seeing a heroic man rescuing other people, rescuing women and children in particular, right? And the guys like to get into that guy. They want to put on that skin suit. They want to go and be that hero, like in Extraction with Chris Hemsworth. They want to go be that guy that's plunged into the heart of danger, and it's him against 1,000 other guys, and he's going to come out on top somehow. And that's we love that because like as a guy, you've either imagined yourself in that position before, or you found yourself in a similar position of being overwhelmed. And so again, like as I said, the women enjoy this because they themselves can put themselves in the position of being rescued by this tall, handsome fellow who's going to risk his life for them, right? So that it's not really a phenomenon. It just sort of plays on the lizard brain at the core of like who we are as human beings, as a species. We like bright colors. We like it when the good guy wins, if you will. As Americans, especially, we like an underdog because that's our story, But yeah, exactly, Alphonse. German exceptionalism, Scandinavian exceptionalism, Asian exceptionalism, Caucasian exceptionalism, African exceptionalism, whatever you like. Hindu exceptionalism. This is the kind of thing that we just don't talk about. We wonder why the rest of the world is so perplexed by us, but we run around telling our kids that they hate this country. I mean, now there's a lot of reasons to hate it at the moment. but we do have a lot of things to be proud of, and that's what we should be telling our kids. Wait for them to become adults to find out about this horrible shit. You know, I really, the world would be a better place if adults were the ones that had to make decisions about what the truth of slavery is about rather than forcing, you know, critical race theory on a fucking fifth grader and expecting them to make peace with what the hell happened 400 years ago. You want to talk about evil, right? Putting that shit on kids. And we wonder why they come up eating fucking Tide Pods and dancing in traffic, right? We wonder why. Minaho says, Gabe interview with Chuck Dixon was more funny. Well, this isn't about funny. This is more about the fact that he's talking about like this militant feminist invasion of every facet of Western life has completely obliterated life itself. You know, you can get up and breathe and eat and go to work, certainly, but existing beyond those barriers has just become a monumental Herculean task. It's not like you can't go out and have a beer with your friends, but God forbid a woman like joins you at the table or is at the bar with you guys. At any minute, that could turn into a fucking 6-month court battle that lands one of you in jail. Yeah, just go home. Yeah, just got home. Welcome aboard. Welcome aboard.
It is phenomenal. And the thing is, you know, do they learn a lesson from these things? And to my mind, Paramount has not learned a lesson from these things. They just keep pressing Taylor Sheridan for more and more material. I read recently that they're going to capitalize on Yellowstone's success by giving George Clooney a television. Well, that makes no sense whatsoever. When has George Clooney ever been successful in anything he's produced? Never. And how does that relate to Yellowstone? It doesn't. It's the polar opposite of what Yellowstone's doing. Anything he would produce would be, you know, a limp noodle compared to what Yellowstone is doing. If I were Paramount, I'd be searching for the next Taylor Sheridan.
Yeah,
I'd give Craig Z. Zoller $1 billion to come and work for Paramount.
Yeah.
So you know, he's talking about this guy that imagined these not hyper masculine stories, but these stories that don't make men look like boobs. You know, that don't embarrass the entirety of the male species. He's talking about these guys that can write a story that doesn't insult a male audience, it doesn't insult a female audience, and doesn't spend most of its time trying to justify the many myriad of genders we have in between those two now, right? It seems very simple, but for some reason it's rocket science to these ESG junkies, you know? For some reason, these black rock snorters, they just can't get it, you know?
Yeah, man, that guy does not work enough at all.
Well, now there may be a reason for that. Maybe that's the way he works, you know. But you know, there's guys like that out there.
There are.
There's another guy out there. The guy did what's it called, the Murder Club or something like that. I mean, he did oh god, Blue Ruin.
Okay.
Are you taking notes? Chuck's giving you stuff to look up and, you know, have a peek at.
Go grab that guy. Would you like to create a TV series for us? Go as dark as you want, go as crazy and nuts as you want.
Yeah, I mean,
but they don't learn the lesson.
Taylor's obviously a fast writer and pretty prolific.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
So I'm stunned.
But there's obviously a limit.
That's a statement, because like Chuck Dixon is like a machine. A machine. Like, he took 2 weeks putting together that Alphacore thing and he was ready to roll. That was it.
To how much he can do and how much he can take on and still have a life. So they're having
the quality of the work has got to suffer at some point.
Well, they're having it produce the Bass Reeves show, which is on right now, which I've been enjoying. I really liked last night's episode quite a bit. It is definitely, it's written by another guy who's, I think, is talented, but it's definitely not Taylor's writing. But I think it's obviously under his tutelage and he oversees the whole thing,
editing,
and probably gives a thumbs up or thumbs down. But I think that's a strong series. I think it's great to have a Western, and Bass is obviously one of the more fascinating lawmen of the Old West. That's for sure.
Right.
So, but yeah, there's just, I believe there's a lot of talent out there. I just, not only in comics, but also in movies and TV. But I think that a lot of the gatekeepers and a lot of this DEI and
ESG stuff,
woke stuff, it keeps those people out. so it's not for a lack of talent out there. I think there's probably some writers out there who have written brilliant scripts, which are just thrown in the trash because they don't check off enough boxes.
So this is the crux of why I wanted to start this stream and talk about this, right? It took a little while to get here, but this is what it is. It's checking the boxes, all right? A lot of these writers don't know what they're doing. They're not brought in to know what they're doing. Most of them are brought in because they're a clean slate, they're not that expensive, and they agreed to betray everything they know to be true about humanity for a profit. For them, not for anybody else, apparently. But you have this group of people now that are expressly hired, fired, kept afloat, if you will, by these industries. Vita Ayala is one of example, the whiz kid over at Marvel, right? Vita Ayala is a person that has no business being anywhere near comic books. Could do very well as a fan fiction writer, provided she didn't try to publish it, right? Remember how that went. But this is what you're polluted with now, front to back, up, down, back, whole way around the ship here is these people that have no basis in the mediums they're working in and were brought in to usurp them, because this is what they've finally run into. If you haven't noticed, they're doing all these reboots, rehashes, reimaginings, all that jazz. They're doing their real life Disney movies and all that because they've reached a heat death of creativity. Okay? If you haven't noticed, corporations don't like to take risk. And what you're seeing with Disney is not taking risks. They remember with Rise of Skywalker, how they cut that up, had several different development teams work on it, all that different stuff. They had different endings. They were polling people and then cutting up the movie depending on how the polls went on the screening and stuff like that, pre-screening. So this is how they operate. It's not about trying to create something new to make a profit on even. You can't lure them in with that anymore even. What they want to do is they want to take advantage of what they have. That's why Miles Morales is becoming so important. Yes, they won the power to keep Spider-Man, but now they have a character that they can run in tandem with Spider-Man. And for them, that satisfies their DEI and ESG requirements to continue getting loans from the World Bank. All right? Because that's how it works. If you don't know, this was actually BlackRock and Main Street and Vanguard bought a bunch, State Street, whatever their name is, bought a bunch of senators. And what they passed was a law that these corporations have to reach a certain percentage of diversity, equity, and inclusion in their everything, like McDonald's, Sherwin-Williams Paint, Disney, all these people, these corporations have to meet a certain percentage of DEI in order to qualify for loans from the World Bank. Okay? And so that's how they're getting them into this and tying them onto it. Why the corporations are just sort of acting like there's a gun to their head as they behave like this. It's no surprise that Dylan Mulvaney became a thing, right? We all understand what Bud Light was attempting to do there, despite their squirming and worming around it. Okay, because what we're dealing with isn't just a group of political activists. You're dealing with a multinational, multi-trillion-dollar group of people that own every fucking thing on the planet. Just Google BlackRock, dude. Just Control T, BlackRock, and go on the adventure. You're gonna have fun. Believe me, you'll have nightmares once you find out about them. And that's what you're dealing with, is that these institutions want to create a social change, and so they're paying for it. They are literally forcing these corporations to create this stuff. They can't say no. Now, we want to sit back here and say, oh, well, Disney could just tell BlackRock to screw off anytime. They can't. It's law. They have to abide by this stuff now if they want to receive their loans. Okay? Now, if they don't want to receive their loans, Disney's on the hook for several billions of dollars in debt. So they have to either immediately pay that back or start a repayment structured plan, and then also make enough profit to pay whatever that is back, as well as stay afloat and grow. Which, for Disney, not impossible, but I'm not convinced that they can pull that off right now in the state that they're in. So we're looking at this from a perspective of like the everyman, as opposed to the reality that these corporations are facing. They're not good people. They are not on our side. Don't make that mistake. That's not the case I'm making here. All of these people made the decision to take on these billions of dollars worth of debt to trap themselves into this situation. They have all allowed this gun to be pointed at them. They have all consented to the gun being pointed at them even. Some of them even like the gun being pointed at them, like Robert Downey Jr., who wants you to eat the bugs. He is very happy about pod living and bugs and not owning anything, and you'll be happy. Okay? That's Robert Downey Jr. So that's what you're dealing with. You're not dealing with people who can be bargained with. You're not dealing with people who want to even listen about an alternative, because there is only one way now in their world. And that's through BlackRock and Vanguard, ESG, and DEI. But as we're seeing the collapse of Disney and Marvel and all these institutions that are attached to these mega conglomerates that are forcing them to do these things, and they are forcing them. Nobody really is in on this. They're all putting on their face because they don't want to lose their job. Heather Antos loves this stuff because she profits off of it. She's one of the products of this system. But I assure you, the people that actually are in the investors, like we see this with Nelson Peltz and these other guys, Perlmutter, and these other guys that are on the Disney board, they don't want this woke stuff. It's costing them money. They don't want this. They're high-end investors. They're trying to have like a hostile takeover of Disney to stop this crap. I don't know where they're going to get the money to clear the debt, but they'll at least try to break away from this DEI stuff. That's how desperate things have become. But as they're collapsing, and again, over the last 6 months, Disney has lost so much face with the public. Just talk to your average normie person. They're not watching anything new from Disney. Just go ahead. You're at the grocery store, just like start up a conversation with the cashier. Just be like, hey, you seen anything new on Disney Plus? They're most likely going to tell you, no, I turn on old movies with my kids, and that's what we watch. Like, we watched the first Toy Story the other day, and my kids had never seen it or whatever, That's most likely the response you're going to get. If they have Disney Plus at all. A lot of these people don't. They have Tubi now. Tubi's the new giant because it's got all the old shit on it, too. Uncensored, by the way. It's not like Bill Nye just inexplicably not talking about male and female chromosomes anymore. Like, it blips in that episode. But this is where the indie market comes in, right? Now, Chuck talks about this, that what interests women in comics, what keeps men interested in comics, what drives both of them to participate in the same market. Now, my mother was a big fan of the 66 Batman. She did not read the comics. She did not like it when Batman was fighting aliens. She didn't like it when he was hanging out with Superman too much. If Superman came to help with something like a ship being lost at sea or whatever, that was okay. But if Superman's villains started coming into Batman's world, she was kind of over that. She didn't want that. She liked her Batman that could like park in front of the Gotham police station, get out of the Batmobile, walk up the front fucking steps through the front door into Commissioner Gordon's office and give him the business, She liked that Batman. And so that's the kind of like background that I come from, is like these humble heroes, these characters that will save a kitten from a tree, that will rescue orphans in a bus that's teetering on the edge of a cliff. And again, like, you don't see that anymore in these heroes. Kwanzaa, I don't know if you're familiar with him. I believe his name is Kwan Stefeo, something like that. Kwanzaa is what he's known as. Notorious racist, turbo racist. And he created a Supergirl knockoff character called Good Girl. And Good Girl is raised by racist white people. She's an adopted child of racist white people. And that's her story, is overcoming racism and expectation being a young female, superpowered black woman. I can't think of anything less appealing to either side of the gender equation here of the coin, right? Men aren't interested in that because it's preaching to them that they're wrong, and women aren't interested in it because it's nothing they care about. Really. Especially the way Kwanzaa presents it as like this on its face racism, like blatant, like you might scare people, honey. Showing up, as the kind of person you are was something her adopted father said to her. Like you being black might scare people. Really, 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 that happened. So what I did when I created the Colossals, and in particular Star Supreme, is I went and I did research on what exactly is the female hero's arc. Now, you're familiar with the male hero's arc. You've heard this before. The male hero's arc involves a circle. There's the normal, there's a descent into not normal. The hero has to learn a new skill, a new truth is established, and then the hero rises out of that new truth into the new reality, having either become victorious over whatever obstacle had presented itself in the beginning that took him out of normalcy and set him on this path, or overcoming himself, who has been the greatest obstacle to him in the story. Either way, the upturn on that bottom part of the circle involves the defeat of the obstacle, whatever form it takes. The female hero's arc, it's not a circle even, it's a figure eight. What we have to understand about women is that they are not innately driven to violence off the bat. One of the things that I've come to understand as I'm doing research about this, as I'm talking to the women in my life that are, like strong. And what I define as strong isn't like I ain't need no man. I'm talking about a woman who is self-determining, that she is not a Mrs. She has her own identity. You don't refer to her as Mrs. X. You refer to her as Betty, or that's Cider's mom, Lori, they have an identity. My mother had an identity. When my father introduced her, as they went around, the meeting people, my father was a businessman, so he would regularly meet new people all the time with her because they'd go out to dinner to seal a deal or whatever. And he would introduce her. He says, "This is my wife, Miss Lori." And that's how he would introduce her. She wasn't like, this is my wife, Mrs. X. This isn't my wife, like flat. She had her own identity, her own something separate from him. They were married. They loved each other. They did many things together. But she had a separate identity from him. They were a unit together. They raised me that way. But she had her own identity. And that's the kind of strength I'm talking about. It's a woman that lends her ability, that lends her strength, that lends her knowledge, intuition to the cause of a man, to the cause of the man of her dreams, of her desires, the man she's decided to spend the rest of her life with. That's the kind of strength I'm talking about. For young women who are single, I'm referring to the concept of being a self-determining woman in the sense that you are not being driven by politics. You are not being driven by revenge. You are not being driven by the accidents or evils that were practiced upon you as a child. And you are not being driven by a sense of superiority. You are simply being driven by the adventure or the addiction to learning that you have. I've met many women. My third fiance was a learned lady. She had gone to college. She even produced her own zine magazine while she was there, Xeroxed and all. It was adorable. But this was a person who sought out knowledge, who sought out living and being and growing and evolving, was not satisfied with stagnating with a bunch of hashtags, And that's the strength I'm talking about. It's a woman that has her own identity, that has her own sense of purpose, but is not using that to steamroll any obstacle in her way, male or female. And similarly, this is the way that a strong man is presented. If you really think about how I've been describing these women, it's not necessarily different from how we think of a strong man. It's in what a man does is he cuts the way forward, right? He clears the path. This is this is a dichotomy that not a lot of people think about when they're writing, okay? So when you have male and female characters, one of the things you need to understand about them is men will protect and women will preserve. All right? So when men are in the protection situation, right? When men are threatened, they will protect. A man will protect his territory, his family. He will die on his feet for his protecting his values, right? So men protect. A woman will take her family and she will run. This is not seen as dishonorable. This is not seen as cowardice when a woman does it. She will take her family, her small children, and maybe her teenage children as well, and she will run. And that woman will self-sacrifice. She will not eat. She will not buy new clothes for herself. She may end up selling herself in order to provide for that child, as we saw with Anakin and Shmi. So this is the protect versus preserve mentality when you're creating female heroes, female villains even, right? And so, again, this is a total concept that's lost on assholes like Via Ayala and Heather Antos, because they don't view this as important. They probably don't even recognize this about themselves. That's probably the saddest thing about this. Like, a lot of women don't know what the fuck labia majora and labia minora are. Not menorah, like the Jewish candles things, like minoras and tiny, the beef curtains. They don't know what those are, right? That's really sad that you don't know what the fuck your own genitalia are. And then let alone above that, like how your species, your gender species behaves like on the average, you know, like this isn't a monolith of female and male behavior. It's just on average how men and women react to threats, to what they value, for instance. So, yeah. Cider needs no, I don't do that. No. I like the French girls with the big booties. That's what I do, you know? But that's yeah, no, not the menorah with the candles. This is the beef curtains I'm talking about. But again, I mean, a lot of these modern creators don't even begin to recognize this about themselves, let alone the world around them. So it's an ill-fated attempt to try and bring them up to speed on this stuff. The key to doing this appropriately, having like a battle-ready lady like Star Supreme, is not sacrificing their femininity. Now, this doesn't mean that they're vain, that they're afraid to break a nail, or, oh gosh, oh gee, I didn't mean to hurt you. Are you okay, sweetie pie? None of that. But what you need to do is that you need to address what the female hero's journey is. And so like the male, you have the female beginning out in normal, and then something disrupts that normal and sets this female on a path of change. However, at the bottom, where the male becomes motivated by training or a mentor or some type of spiritual experience that expands his consciousness, capabilities, or belief system, for instance, the female transcends into the spiritual realm. Not that she becomes a ghost, but her motivations leave the physical realm and become much more esoteric. They become much more cerebral, spiritual, as I said, soulful. And so this descent, it heads down into why violence is necessary. Because the female, again, has to ask herself, is she capable of violence? And so this is the bottom of that figure eight before it curves back up to meet that low point where the hero is like losing everything but learning the lesson, okay? So while the female is down here in the bottom of this figure eight, she's doing the spiritual reconstruction from the character that wouldn't hurt a fly. We saw this with Mulan, right? We saw this with Mulan. From a character who is otherwise clumsy and affable and non-threatening into a capable warrior. And because again, women are not initially motivated to violence when threatened. They're motivated to preserve life, not protect it. Again, these are not like literal monolithic terms. I'm just using this to try and explain the separation of it, right? There are women who protect life, certainly. There are men who preserve life, certainly. But this is for the sake of the explanation I'm giving. This is where we're at. And so when I created Star Supreme, I didn't want to like hit you over the head with like, oh yeah, all this superpowered wonderfulness is going on with this character. All of this grandeur and perfection is happening with this character, and there are no bad days, and there's no raininess, and there's no like shadow to this character at all. And then I didn't want to give you like this hardened, gritty character who's just grizzled by the world around her and bewildered by it. Sort of like in spite of the world around it is where her positivity comes from. I didn't want to do that either. Instead, I created an aspirational female who's motivated to violence when she feels her values are threatened, right? Because she feels capable of violence. Not because she's protecting life, but she's preserving it. So in the conflicts you see with Superman, he's hesitant to kill people because he wants to give them another chance, right? And this is what I'm drawing from. With Star Supreme, this old adage is that a mother will tell you, you wait until your father gets home and you'll get punished. He's going to beat you with that belt when he gets home. The mother may slap you or whatever, but the father's the threat. The father's the authority figure that comes in and, asserts what the law of the household is, the domain he controls is. And so you don't have Star Supreme doing that. Instead, her conflicts are mainly wrestling a adversary to a point where they agree to cease their violence and move on with their lives or go into custody, in the sense that they've broken laws. Now, she's driven to kill in certain instances, but this is because the opponent has either murdered someone who was close to her or is threatening her children. Again, you can't have a female soldier is less likely to take vengeance for the death of a comrade than a male soldier. It's a different type of camaraderie. It's not that they're sort of driven to hate you and will abandon you to die out on a battlefield. That's not the case. There are plenty of honorable women that do exactly what you're supposed to do as a soldier. But on the average, ladyfolk are more engaged with getting away from the violence than participating. And again, like the way I created Star Supreme and the way she goes about this is I don't put her in a position where she has to murder people. I don't put her in a position where she has to overcome them with violence. It's the same with Superman. He's not put in a position when he's at his best, when Superman is doing the stories that you really remember, it's not because he's super strong. It's not because he's got the laser vision to win the day. Those are really boring stories. It's when he has the moral superiority or arrives at it in the story itself. Because Superman's a character that doesn't evolve. If you don't know, he has this sort of he has the permanent morality, I think is what Brett Sanderson calls it. But he's the character that doesn't have the morality that moves. And instead, I wanted Star Supreme to continue to learn, to make mistakes, but not in the sense of where she's killing people, but to make mistakes in judgment. Because again, I didn't want to present a character that had like all of the qualities of Superman, because then you've just put tits on Superman. And that's not Star Supreme. I also made her an adoptive mother. So she adopts two children who are, victims of circumstance, for instance, because again, this is the maternal call. This is the maternal preserver's instinct, is to take these children in and to shelter them and allow them to grow, to keep them safe and allow them to grow into better beings. And so this is what happens with Shadow Spinner and Isaac. Those are her adopted children. And Star Supreme lives with her family because I don't have her living separately. She lives with her family on a farm in Maine, on a homestead in Maine, where they make fireworks. That's the family's business, is they make and sell fireworks nationally. And that's it, because I wanted to make sure that I wasn't giving you this person that has like this ultimate perfect life. I didn't want to give you a person that was like Ray, that had an answer for everything and was always the right answer for it. And when she screwed up, it was very dumb reasons, because they're like, oh yeah, we got to make sure that Ray has a fault somewhere, right? And so when I put Star Supreme together, I wanted to make sure that like what her main conflict, the biggest problems in her life, were being there for her children, were balancing that work-life relationship that you hear women complain about a lot. And for the men, I wanted to make sure that she had like explosive adventures that were fun and entertaining and off the beaten path. They weren't usual adventures you'd find a character that flies and has laser vision doing, that sort of thing. And that was the key that really made her unique. The mistakes that Disney makes with their rad femmes, if you will, are creating these female titans, these female, these men with tits on them. Really, I mean, most of them look like it these days, but that's what they've made, and that's their biggest mistake: is that men don't want to see a woman acting like a man, and women don't really envision themselves acting like a man. They want to see a female hero driven to violence by things that they would understand a woman being driven to violence over. A threat to her family, a threat to her values. That is what drives women to violence usually, right? Men will protect. You know, if a law is broken, we will protect. Like RoboCop is all about this, okay? RoboCop is all about the difference between men and women when it comes to this protect, preserve thing, okay? And so that's why when you make female characters, you have to actually think about the women you know in your life and what motivates them and what makes their like blood pressure boil over and things like that. See, again, like Delilah is on the other end of this. Delilah all the way over here on the right. Delilah Church is my sorcerer supreme character. But I made her like a character that has a very dark past and she has a very gray morality because she again, like women respond to trauma very differently than men. They will bury it, they will make lies up about it, they will compartmentalize it and just completely forget it ever happened until one fine day they have a meltdown with a knife in the kitchen. You know, that's Delilah. That's so Star Supreme is this well put together kind of lady person who goes out in the world with the best intentions, and Delilah is a lady person who goes out into the world because of duty, because of a sense of having to clean up the mess that she created through many thousands of years of being alive. And again, like men are usually driven by duty and things like that. So why would a woman feel this, right? So I had to pin her down into a sense of guilt that women would feel able to relate to. And so Delilah's whole thing is that she ran away from a mistake that she made in heaven. She's a fallen angel, but she didn't betray God. She ran away from God's judgment. A little different. So she didn't fight. She ran away. A little different. And so over the years, she ended up like having lots of kids on Earth with humans and other angels and things like that. And so a lot of the superpowered creatures on my world are born out of Delilah's descendants. And so when you're experiencing Delilah, she has this guilt over unleashing all of this chaos onto the world, not getting like, I wouldn't say proper punishment from her father, but atoning for what she did. And really, she didn't commit a crime. In Delilah's story, what happens is that as an angel, her job is deciphering the word of God and recording it. Not like the big voice of God or anything like that. She's just in charge of like deciphering the word and recording it. And in the process of dealing with that, she learns the word of God like a language. And what this is what magic is in my world, is divine souls can speak the word of God and in that way warp reality, change reality. And that's the power of the word of God, is it changes reality in the most literal sense. And this is what Delilah unleashed onto the world. And so after many thousands of years of dealing with this being unleashed on the planet and having to contain it and all the blood that went with that, all of the fighting and death that went with it, all of the husbands that she had that she outlived, all of the children that she outlived, this kind of stuff. So that's the guilt that drives Delilah Church to action. Because there are so many regrets that she's just buried over, that she's compartmentalized, that it's all she can do is respond to the disasters in the world in order to retain any sense of purpose and self. And again, so this is the two ends of what female characters can become. You have this, and again, on a hero end anyway. So you have this aspirational hero and you have this reactionary hero, this gray area hero. Okay? The woman I saw in Endgame was even more annoyed with the girl power scene than I was. Says Ink Cowboy. Ink Cowboy says most real women don't like the men with tits characters. Yeah, exactly. Bobcat Studio says I read this comic. It was good. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. You know, I took a different route with Shadow Spinner. She has spider legs, like the Iron Spider, but they're built into her back. You know, she's actually like the mutated spider lady, and she's bald like Nosferatu, and she has vampire fangs, and she eats magic. That's that part of her diet is magic. And so she has a very traumatic life. I won't get into the whole backstory here because that'll make it way too long. She has a very traumatic backstory. But through Star Supreme being her mother and you know bringing her out of being a feral child, for instance, and allowing her to establish an identity of her own under the safety of being in an isolated space in Maine. You know, out in Eastport, it's a very rural space. There's not a lot going on out in Eastport, if you don't know. And so allowing this child to grow has led her to a point where the only problems in her life is that she doesn't feel beautiful. And that's Shadow Spinner's story, is that as she grows up, she doesn't do well in her mother's shadow, in her adopted mother's shadow, because, you know, Star Supreme's pretty lady. She's tall. She's, you know, got it going on. And so she finds herself Shadow Spinner finds herself comparing herself to Star Supreme. She ends up wearing a wig and putting on like all sorts of makeup to hide her appearance and a fake backpack to hide her spider legs, that kind of thing. And the moral of her story as she goes through this experience is that she didn't need to change at all. What she needed to do was accept who she was, right? And this isn't that SJW angle thing. This isn't that you're beautiful if you're 500 pounds. This is so you're bald and you have weird elf ears and you eat magic and have giant spider legs on your back. Well, that's quite a Yahtzee to be dealt. But better to accept it than to try and hide it. And that's the story of Shadow Spinner. And she eventually meets a scientist who studies spiders, and he's fascinated by her. And they fall in love because he likes studying her. That's it. That, you know, and so in the end, who she is really, the reality of her being is rewarded. And again, it's a hetero relationship. He's not a cuck with his dick in a cage or anything like that. He's just a scientist that studies spiders and has a girlfriend that turns into his wife, who is a spider lady. Not like Spider-Man spider lady. But again, like when you write a female character, you have to like acknowledge what women are in reality. Not like Rey, where you're just like, okay, let's do fan fiction Luke Skywalker, but make sure he pees sitting down or something. I don't know. Or when you try and like, I don't know what the hell they were trying to do with Black Widow in that movie. And Taskmaster, where you change that into a woman who's been so abused that she becomes a man. Nope. Sorry. That's really not how it works. And that's why these things don't fly, because it doesn't reward what you expect when you see a female character. This is what Chuck's talking about when he talks about the third wave feminism, fourth wave feminism invasion, is that you're looking at characters and writers and stories that are not by people who have an understanding of the world around them. They don't have an understanding of the women in their lives. They don't even have an understanding of themselves as women, in Vita Ayala's case, right? And this is the mistake that they keep making over and over again. It's copy and pasting their lives into this, as opposed to trying to sample together what they know and combining it with their own personal experience. You know? I got male characters here, you know, Hypercussion. I don't talk about him too much, but he's a guy that, like, his primary thing is he and his fiance explore a supermassive spaceship that's full of demons that's buried underneath Mount Katahdin here in Maine. But his story isn't about the demons. It isn't about all the weird, out of place technology that they discover buried under the mountain and stuff like that. It is about his journey to accepting that he can fall in love with his fiance and get married to her without her dying. Because his parents died very young because they got into a fight, a marital fight. And his mother, having the ability to basically Kitty Pryde was his mother, phased them out of reality in front of him. So his parents just literally dropped out of Earth, out of reality in front of him while they were fighting. And that traumatized him to the point where he didn't trust, where if he fell in love with someone, they'd die because the people he loved died in front of him. And again, like, a lot of guys can relate to that they had something very beautiful and very special to them taken away before they were ready or could accept it to be taken away. And that's JP's story. That's Hypercussion's story, is that he is grappling with what it is to move on from what he perceives to be the death of his parents, to trust that the fate of those people he loved will not be repeated again with his fiance. It's not hard to do this stuff. You just have to think about what you know to be true in reality, what you've felt yourself, what you've thought about the world even. These people overcomplicate it by like, well, we got to check off the black guy box. We're going to check off the lesbian box. We're going to check off the transsexual box. We're going to check off the ain't no need no man box. Now we can tell the story about Lex Luthor stealing 40 cakes. Is it any wonder why we can't translate this stuff? Why we can't sit through it? Why it's like nails on a chalkboard? So I'm just saying, female characters aren't that hard. They're not that hard. But when you're trying to shove an agenda through them, yeah, they become very insufferable and difficult to market, wouldn't you know? When you're trying, again, like, I'm not trying to usurp what you expect out of a female hero. When Star Supreme is performing this action, she is putting a creature out of its misery. There's a shark monster that's in horrible pain, and she is killing it in order to put it out of that pain because it's been forcefully mutated into a monster it can't be reverted back from. And this pushes her to an emotional extreme where she's forced to go to violence in order to solve a problem in front of her, to fatal violence to solve a problem in front of her. And it contributes to later on in the story when she's again forced to fatal violence because not only are her values violated, but her family is put in jeopardy. I don't try to get you to believe that she's a mechanic and that she knows how to use a lightsaber the first time she touches it, and she can use the Force just by watching some other jackass do it in a forest. I'm not trying to convince you that she's all that in a bag of chips. I'm just trying to convince you that she's a mom, and when you push that mama bear button, you're going to get your shit fucked. That's all I'm trying to convince you of, is just don't push the mama bear button with Star Supreme and you'll survive. Sushi? Nah, they dissolve. That's the trick of it. See, I lean into a lot of that 2006 vibe of comics when stuff was sort of anime-y, where the heroes were really proclaiming about their stuff. They really proclaimed their beliefs and ideas a lot. And that's where I'm at with my comics. So I don't lean into the gore and the monster being exploded into permanent giant shark chunks. These parts dissolve into a red smoke. It's not blood, it's a red smoke. And because I don't want to imply, because I am trying to make this for kids. I am trying to make this comic so that it can be, like in schools and libraries and stuff. And so what I want to imply is that the violence wasn't painful. Because you see the parts of the monster dissolving, the audience is meant to give the idea that it's been released from whatever torment it was in, as opposed to having the chunks of shark monster laying around that represent the finality of death, for instance, in the human consciousness, for instance, as an example. I don't know what fish think about it, but But again, I mean, when we're building female characters, you just have to remember what you in your life know drives a woman to violence. What motivates her to take action above and beyond getting away from the action. And you all know a lady like this. They all take different forms. Could be a tomboy. It could be your mother who, when the dog was imperiled by the next door neighbor's dog, she took out a rolling pin and beat the hell out of that neighbor dog. You'd never seen your mother get violent before, but she wielded that rolling pin like a lightsaber and took out that dog, That's you got to base it on what you know. But, I just decided to study this stuff for a while and understand it in and out and upside down and backwards. Because if you look at the US demographics right now, women are 51% of our population here in the US. That's going to be 52% before 2025 without a conflict diminishing the male population. Now, if we end up going to World War III, guess what? They are not going to be putting Betty and Veronica on the back of a troop carrier truck in the middle of town when the draft comes through. When they say they're adding women to the draft, that means they're taking the ma'ams. They're going to go in and take the ma'ams that by putting a wig on and a skirt, you're not getting around the draft. They'll 4F all the little Barbies that can't carry a gun, so they'll get dismissed. But anybody else, your Earthas, your Hecubas, Helgas, those ones, they're gonna get recruited into it. But that's what they're doing there with that. And again, so let's say you get into World War III. Guess what? Male population gets diminished by the millions at that point. Sorry, there's no way around that. You know what they're gonna do. It's World War III. They're gonna send us everywhere on the planet. You know it. And so the female population will surge to probably 53% by 2030. And so that's what I put into like my equations about everything I'm creating. As I don't think you can fix what's wrong with the West, what's wrong with humanity in general when you look around the world, if you don't fix the women too. We see in high school exit polling with the kids right now, with the teenagers who are voting for the first time in this next election, that they are polling hard right among men and hard left among women. And it is almost split right down the middle between them. Most boys graduating high school are hard right. I wouldn't say like, goose stepping hard right, but they're pro-Trump, And then the women who are graduating are very pro-left. They're very pro-Taylor Swift, And so you have a very split group of people who are going to now become parents very soon, if they're not already. And so if you're not creating media that explains to them a better way of living, a more aspirational way of thinking about themselves, the world, and the relationship between those two, and you're not pitching that to both ends of what it is to be human, male and female, you're not going to accomplish much. You're going to have a lot of based little boys going around, a lot of based single dads going around that know what's up, know what's down, but they're going to be single and they're going to be coming from homes without a dad because the women didn't get fixed, because the women didn't get set right. There wasn't an aspirational idea for them. There was just get back into the kitchen, get in line, shit some babies out, because we don't really have a solution for these rad femmes. Everybody jokes around like, the women just need to get their legs up in the air and it'll solve all the problems. Sure, for a little while. But what do you do? What do you do with these motivated women that have now had 40 years to look back on women kicking ass and taking names, at least the way as the media wants to let us believe? What do you do with them? You put them up against the wall? That's a lot of women you got to wipe out then. So you can't do that. Instead, you make a better case to them. You create a hero like Star Supreme that represents the virtues, the positivity of being a mother, the strength that comes from that, and the sense of duty, the sense of purpose, and really a reason for living that comes with that. And majority of women are going to respond positively to that, because that little lizard brain at the core of the human brain says, aha, I know what this is. I recognize this. This feels good. Have some dopamine, And so that's the case I'm making with Star Supreme, is to rein in this rad femme idea that men and women are incapable of talking to each other, incapable of existing in the same sphere, let alone being friends, let alone falling in love. She goes on to have a husband. And they meet through a dream world. and she's forced to be without him for several years. And it nearly drives her insane not having him around because Trentillion, her husband, he's not this guy that comes in and says, baby, you don't need to work no more. He comes in and he acts as her shield. His great ability is to make her feel safe. He's very strong, very powerful on his own, has earned his right at her side, just as she's earned her right at her side at his, right? They're not like unequal to each other. She's not better than him, he's not better than her. They fill out each other's weaknesses though. All of the strong women I've talked to in my life, all of the strong women I've learned from, all of the ones that have come and gone that I've dated even, have all told me they don't need a man to fight their battles. They need a man that makes them feel safe. When they feel scared or when they feel threatened or when they feel just utterly overwhelmed, they want a man that represents solidarity to them, that represents safety to them. That's the safe harbor in stormy weather. And this is what Trentillion is. And for him, he gets to take his like shield off around her. He's a soldier that can't leave the war behind. He lost a war in the future, and he's determined not to lose it again in the past. And for Star Supreme, she allows him to take off that drive and experience life. Experience the wind moving through his hair, experience what it feels like to be a father, not only to adopted children, but to biological children when they get around to having their own kids. And so Trentillion is made whole by her giving him permission to relax around her, to feel safe enough not to have the war in their bedroom, on the porch swing, when they're having their picnic. It's not that she forces him to think about other things, but what she represents to him is an oasis in a sea of chaos, in a desert of misery. That's what she is to him. And this is something that just doesn't exist in modern media. Find it. I defy you to go out in the world and look into Western media in the past 5 years and find anything that is remotely like this. You won't. You won't. The West is petrified of allowing men and women to talk to each other, let alone be shown in a positive light, coexisting, thriving, and being in love, the capital L love, the divine kind that exists beyond death. When was the last time you heard about love extending beyond death? When was the last time you heard about love being divine? Yeah. And so what Chuck is talking about is all stuff that men and women respect. This is what I'm talking about too. Men and women respect these realities. All of us want to seek out a perfect love. All of us men who are married here, they love their wives not because this woman is just some big booty, big titty goddess that makes them come all the time. No, it's because there is this person that makes up the foundation of their life, that gives them purpose, that gives them drive, that rewards their drive and purpose as well, not punishes them or continues to extract trial after trial out of them. No. Every effort, even if it fails, is rewarded by this woman who nurtures not just the family, but the hope for the family in the future. It's all foreign to these people. I'm telling you, it's all foreign. It's all Chinese to them. It's moon speak. They have no idea what any of this means. But you feel it in your heart what I'm talking to you about. You understand what I'm talking to you about. It's not some mythical romance. It's the romance that we all grew up expecting to have, and some of us do. That you have a house with a family, 2.5 kids, a wife, a car, a dog, and a pissed off cat. We grew up dreaming about that. We grew up for that being the pinnacle of what we could hope for in life. And for a lot of young men, that doesn't exist. It's not even a thought on their mind. They're trying to escape that reality because they saw it backfire on their fathers so spectacularly. So again, I say, if you're going to fix the boys, you've got to fix the girls too. This is the point of characters like Star Supreme. This is to show them an aspirational female. Find me one right now that's an aspirational female that's not out here trying to kick some dude in the nuts, bring him down a peg or two, show these boys how it's actually done, you know? Doesn't exist. It's in the indies, certainly, because there's people out here that understand it, but the mainstream, no clue. Not a trace of it at all. Completely lost. Yeah, and like Fiona Wolf says here, it's sad it feels like my parents with 45 years of marriage are rare. Yeah. Yeah, man. You know, on Friday Night Tights tonight, there was a Mormon guy that confessed that he got kicked out of his RPG group because they found out he was a Christian. You know, and that he was pro-kid. He has 7 children, this guy, and he got kicked out of his RPG group because of it. That's where we're at. That's the level of like, I don't know, societal cohesion that it's like, I don't know if you know this, but when people first quit smoking, you'll some of them anyway, you'll hear them talk about being allergic to cigarette smoke. But in reality, what it is it creates that sort of longing for it, that ache to have the cigarette, the fingers itch, the back of the throat is itchy, that kind of thing. The need for that nicotine fix arises, the jonesing, that kind of thing. And so they say it's an allergy. Ran it into it all the time when I was working for my family's taxi service. Time and time again, people would complain that there was a smell of cigarette smoke and they were allergic, blah, blah, blah. And come to find out, they're an ex-smoker. All right? It's the same thing. You know? So these guys can't tolerate someone being married, having children, being happy about it on top of all that, right? God forbid you're happy with your 7 children and your magic underwear and your wife and all that jazz. Gotta get the hell out of here. We can't have anybody at the RPG table that's positive about human existence. Amazing. Blows my mind. Blows my mind. Yeah, Jim Turner even agrees. He says any kind of stable relationship is a unicorn today. And that's what I'm talking about, is that people, when you create these characters and you set out to create a female character and you want to give them a romance, you need to make that aspirational. Yes, you can have the interpersonal drama. Yes, you can have the melodrama. Yes, you can have all the other jazz. But what you shouldn't do is destabilize it with cheating. You shouldn't destabilize it with having a guy come in and raise some other man's children, like the way with Peter Parker right now. Well, that guy's still around, you know? No. Don't do that. Don't destabilize the relationship. Make it aspirational. Give it challenges, but make those challenges reasonable. Like they're not spending enough time with each other. You know, they have different ideas about how to raise their children. And those don't have to be like, I want to make sure that they know about the gays. No, it can be like, I want to make our children aware of war. We're superheroes and we're fighting a war against evil. And our children should know that that has a very high price. And maybe Star Supreme disagrees with that and doesn't want to expose her children to the harshness of the reality that her parents live every day, that their parents live every day. I don't know yet. But again, like, these are conversations that do not exist in these modern comics that readers would find interesting, nestled in between battle scenes and areas of high conflict. I have a story that I'm working on. It's called The Supreme Family. And it's a story about Star Supreme and Trintillion and their biological children when they're like, 7 or 8 years old, going to Japan on a family day trip because they can fly. So they fly over there and they go on a day trip. In the process, kaiju attack. And the family teams up to take care of the kaiju. And the story ends with them just having frozen ice cream in Tokyo while, helping with the cleanup. That's it. But that's an impactful story to people who don't have a family. That's an impactful story to the little boy that doesn't have a father that's a positive figure in his life or at all. Again, that story doesn't exist out in the mainstream right now. A lot of stuff that punishes the dad, A lot of stuff that punishes the super team that stops the kaiju, makes the kaiju the good guy in that scenario. But, you know, timeless truths. That's right. Stan Lee talked about these. The timeless truths that the good guy always wins, evil is always evil, and women should be rescued, and children are always innocent. The good guy gets the girl, rather. The good guy gets the girl, and children are always innocent. These are the timeless truths that Stan Lee talked about. And that is true today. It's the fabric. It's what we're all craving. When you really think about what he's talking about, that's what you're craving in these stories. That's what everybody's talking about. They miss in the comics. It's what they expected out of the comics. You expected the hero to be of a righteous quality, that he is a superior man that you would want to be, not a man that you already are or have been in the past, right? I don't know. But I've rambled about this for 2.5 hours now. I'm sure you guys' ears are ringing about it, so I'm going to leave you now. Maybe abruptly, I don't know. But I do want you to know that someday it's going to make sense. We might not live to see it, but someday it'll make sense. Anyway, I've talked a lot about this. Feel free to go back through it, make clips, laugh at me, or totally disregard this entire conversation. I don't know. But Chuck Dixon struck a nerve with me today in the good way, and I wanted to talk about what I'd created in the framework that he had outlaid in this interview about a week ago. So here we are, and here I go. Thank you all for tuning in. Feel free to hit like, subscribe if you're new to the channel. If not, feel free to share this out. I don't put it behind a membership wall because I'm not monetized. I'm not going to put it behind a membership wall anyway. That's JDA's thing. See ya. Maybe we're just sleepwalking. But I want to wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. We'll see you in the next one, whenever that is.